Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my yard in Los Angeles, California. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're having a great Catterday, and I hope you're ready to learn something about an amazing cat species. Because today, in Critter Chat, we're going to talk about leopards. Now, leopards are an animal that leopards have mystified people for many, many years, and they're often very respected, very admired, but also very feared and sometimes very persecuted by people. For starters, the leopards are the smallest of what scientists consider the big five cat species. So those would be lions, tigers, jaguars, snow leopards, which is something entirely different, and leopards. So leopards are the smallest of those five because across their range, they range in size quite a bit, but they are still smaller than snow leopards or jaguars and much smaller than tigers or lions. They are also the most widespread of the big cats. What that means is that they live in a variety of places across the majority of 2 different continents. Leopards can be found in a lot of different places throughout Africa and many places in Asia, or at least used to could be. The Asian subspecies of leopards are in a lot more danger than the African subspecies. But they are very adaptable to a very broad variety of habitats, typically living in forested areas, but also thriving in deserts, mountains, grasslands, and jungles. So they can live places where it's cold, they can live places where it's hot. High elevation, low elevation, dry, wet, it doesn't matter. A leopard can pretty much adapt as long as there's food. Now, as I was researching leopards, I was surprised to learn how many different kinds of leopards there actually are. So of actual true leopards, not snow leopards, not clouded leopards, I'll talk about both those in different species. There's also a small cat called a leopard cat. That's not a leopard either. Leopard is a broad term for spotted cats, but specifically of the genetic type of leopard. They have identified at least 9 different subspecies, but that's constantly being reevaluated and fluctuates as more scientific information comes in and more genetic testing is done on the different subspecies. So with the multiple subspecies, they live in different places. So we're going to briefly go over where those leopards live and what kind of leopard those are. So to start off with, there's a leopard called the Indo-Chinese leopard. So this lives in an area of Asia that is from the southern parts of China down through like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and into the Malay Peninsula. So kind of tropical Southeast Asia. That leopard numbers in about the 800 range of leopards left out in the wild, and they are considered critically endangered. That area of the world has a lot of trouble with poaching and a lot of hunting for different human desires, where people want like a leopard skin rug or the claws or the eyes or the teeth for different reasons. Kind of south of there on one of the little islands, the island of Java, there is a leopard that lives only on the island of Java called the Javan leopard. Java is an island with a pretty good number of people. It's part of the country of Indonesia. And one of the unique rhino species also lives only on that island, the Javan rhino. So Java has some very unique individual animals there, and a lot of them are critically endangered or endangered, like the Javan leopard. It's estimated that there's between 350 and 700 Javan leopards, although they haven't been able to get a good count on them for quite a while, and they feel that more research is needed because of the dense jungle of Java and the large human population. The next leopard is the Sri Lankan leopard. So Sri Lanka is an island south of India in Asia, and there are also about 700 to 950 leopards on that island. The biggest issues with Sri Lanka are poaching and human conflict. There's a good number of people that live on Sri Lanka as well. And then a little further across the planet from there, the Arabian leopard. This is the leopard of the Middle East. So Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Israel. It's estimated that there's less than 250 of this kind of leopard left. So they are very rare, but they definitely live in like a deserty mountain situation. And those countries also have had a lot of war over the years, and that has not helped the leopards. Coming in at the most endangered of all kinds of leopards, there's a leopard in the far east of Russia called the Amur leopard. Amur is a region of very far east Russia, kind of north of Japan and north of Korea. That is also where one of the most endangered tigers lives, the Amur tiger. The Amur tiger and the Amur leopard overlap range. That actually causes some problems for the leopards because the Amur tigers are huge, and they will definitely kill a leopard if they can find it and get to it. The Amur leopard is less than 40 individuals in the wild. They have pretty good cameras out in their forest, so they are fairly well documented of where they are and where they live. Their biggest threat is that they don't have a lot of food left in that forest. A lot of people have hunted in those forests for many, many years, and most of the deer and the wild boars that the leopards would eat are kind of gone. And so there's not a lot of food left for the leopards, and until recently they didn't have a lot of protection from the government, and poaching and hunting was still a big problem for the Amur leopard. They're also the furthest north living leopard. They live in areas where it snows, and that means their coat, their fur, is thicker to live in that cold environment. And so people who were going after leopard skins for coats kind of wanted the thicker, warmer coats. And so they were definitely hunted and poached more than other leopard subspecies were. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Persian leopard. So this leopard lives kind of in Western Asia, areas like Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Turkey, Iran, that kind of area. That area has also seen a lot of war in recent times, and that has not helped the population there. The Persian leopards are data deficient. They don't really know how many are out there. They think it's several hundred, but they don't really know, with isolated pockets. In North China, there's a different kind of leopard called the North Chinese leopard. That is a protected species by the government of China, but it is unknown how many of those are left as well. So a lot of these leopard subspecies do need more research done. And then that brings us to the two that have the biggest populations that we know the most about. First, the Indian leopard. This is the leopard that lives in India. It was once widespread across the Indian country and some of the surrounding countries as well. It lives typically in like a forested or mixed with grassland area. And these leopards will have quite a bit of human conflict, as there are a lot of people. There's over 1 billion people in India, and conflict with humans and leopards is a big part of the problem, as leopards will sometimes go after farm animals if there's not enough deer or other animals for them to eat in the forest. Indian leopards number between 12,000 and 14,000, so they are also listed as vulnerable to extinction. And then the leopard with the best chance is the African leopard. African leopards are actually listed as least concern, which means they're technically not endangered at all as of right now. So that's very good news for them. It is estimated that the African population of leopards is about 700,000. That's really quite good for a good-sized predator. That's well higher than the African wild dogs or the African lions even. That's way more leopards. Leopards also are more adaptable to habitat, and they can sometimes live in areas where lions or wild dogs can't, because they live alone. They don't live in a big group, so they don't need as much food. They can live in desert areas, they can live in forested areas, they live in the rainforest in Africa. They also live out on the grasslands, so they're very adaptable to much of what Africa has to offer. And the photo I posted earlier today is an African leopard, and that is an African leopard that I saw when I visited Kenya back in 2010. For most people going to Africa, they kind of rank the animals that people want to see, and they kind of have come up with what they call the Africa Big Five. Traditionally, they were the animals that hunters wanted to hunt when they came to Africa, and the leopard is one of those. The others being elephants, lions, buffalo, rhino, and leopard. Those are the African Big Five. And the leopard is the one that was the hardest to find in Africa. Even though they have a pretty good population, they are very elusive. They are very sneaky cats. Leopards are excellent at ambush hunters. They love trees, which is why I'm standing in the middle of a big tree today. But they are very good climbers, and they will spend most of their time up in a tree. That is also because they are not the biggest guys out there. Leopards that are full grown, a male can weigh between 80 and like 175 pounds maybe. A female can be as small as 50 pounds up to about 135 pounds. And so that puts them much smaller than lions. And definitely, since they usually are alone, they live solitary, they wouldn't be able to hold their ground against hyenas, which actually can weigh more. And even things like African painted dogs or African wild dogs could sometimes drive leopards off. So leopards will spend a lot of their daytime sleeping on a big branch up in a tree, and when they catch something to eat, they will often climb up the tree with their food and hang it on a big branch up high, typically dragging a gazelle or an antelope species up in a tree, even if that animal weighs more than they do. They have really incredible climbing abilities and are really strong at being able to pull things up a tree. Typically, like I said, leopards live alone, so they're solitary, unless it's a mom with her cubs. Her gestation or her pregnancy is about 3 months, maybe 3.5 months on some of the colder weather species. They typically are pregnant just a little longer than the babies, or maybe a little bit bigger. The babies usually weigh less than a pound when they're born. She usually has 2 or 3 cubs, sometimes 1, sometimes more, but 2 or 3 is the average. And they will typically stay with her for about 18 months. The first 3 months, the babies are hidden in like a very dense vegetation or a little cave near some rocks in a space where she feels they're safe. But she will often move them multiple times during that first 3 months to keep them safe from other potential predators. Not that anything really wants to eat a baby leopard, but they would definitely try to kill them because that is future competition. Let's see. Once they're about 3 months old, they'll start to follow mom, and they'll practice stalking or hunting their prey. Leopards are really good at that. That is what they are most known for, is their stealth, their ability to move very sneakily through tall grass, through the tops of trees. They don't necessarily run down their prey, although they can for a short distance. They can run about 30 miles an hour, but they typically will sneak in as close as possible before they ever try to pounce. What else? They have really good eyesight, really excellent hearing, and a very good sense of smell. Like some of the other predators, especially the big cats we've talked about, they have that eye shine, or their eyes kind of glow at night because they have a built-in little mirror inside their eyeball called the tapetum lucidum. That helps more light stay in their eye and uses that to help focus during the dark nights. Leopards, at least the leopards in Africa, typically wake up around sunset or just before that and begin their hunting while it's still light. They kind of identify what they want to eat and where it is while it's light, and then they kind of wait for the sun to go a little darker, things to get a little darker, and then they make their kill, haul it up a tree, and try to be done hunting before the lions or the hyenas wake up once it's dark. They will definitely try to avoid both those predators that are bigger than them, and in other parts of their range. So the leopards in Asia do the same thing, but it's tigers that they're worried about. And sometimes in parts of Asia, wild dogs or wolves, depending on where they live. Now, with leopards, they have a really good sense of smell. They will communicate more through scent. So peeing on things, rubbing scent glands on things, leaving piles of poop around the edge of their territory. Those are all ways that leopards communicate with each other. They are capable of making some vocalizations, some sounds, but it's usually very rare that they want to make a lot of noise. If they're roaring or making loud sounds, some of those other predators might catch in on those and realize that there's another predator nearby, and then they would try to either drive it away or steal its food. So they try to be a little more quiet in moving around amongst lions and hyenas. Now, the main threats for leopards, throughout human existence, they have been a target for poaching because of their beautiful skin. Leopards are typically a yellowish color with large kind of circly spots with a hollow center. Those are called rosettes. They are similar to what a jaguar, but a jaguar's is more broken apart on the edge, and the jaguars have a black dot in the middle. Leopards are kind of a more whole circle with no dot in the middle. It's just yellow in the middle. That's different than a cheetah. Cheetahs just have a black spot on their coat. But leopard coats are highly prized. They have been for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've been worn by many people in many cultures in many countries across the world. And the poaching has continued, even though they're protected on an international level. And even some populations, like the African population, does well. They are still hunted. That's one of the biggest threats to African leopards are trophy hunters. And so poaching and hunting is still a very big problem for the leopard species. Another huge threat is human conflict. Because leopards are smaller than like a lion or a tiger, they will sometimes live closer to people. That has become a huge problem, particularly in India. Leopards will sometimes go after farm animals, and if they can't find farm animals, they'll go after pets. Leopards in many places in India go into villages or towns or even big cities to hunt dogs, sometimes rats, sometimes other things that are kept in cities as well. And on occasion, leopards have been known to hunt and kill people. And so that causes a very retaliatory effect with people, and people sometimes then take it out on leopards and try to get revenge or stop the killing by killing the cat. And often that means that if one leopard attacks some goats and killed 2 goats, 5 leopards get killed because they see leopards for the next year and a half and they think, oh, maybe this is the leopard that killed the goats. Let's kill the leopard. So that's a big problem as well. Another big problem, especially with many of the species that are smaller numbers of leopards, is habitat loss or fragmentation. Leopards typically rely on very big home ranges, so a male will live in one big area. He may overlap with a couple of females, but no other males are permitted in his space. They have to be kind of the next set of forest over. And so they need a lot of space for a small population to live and function well. And so as forests are cut down, as roads are built, as cities expand, as farmland increases, all of those things impact their habitat as well as their ability to move from one area to another. Especially if you think about like a mom leopard with cubs, when those cubs grow up and need to go find territory on their own, if she lives in a forest and say her sister lives next door and their mom lives in a third spot and then 2 males live nearby, those cubs got to go a long ways out to get some good territory. And that may be a big struggle if there's a lot of human activity around. And then, like I mentioned with the Amur leopards, the leopards up in Russia, prey loss has been a huge problem for a lot of leopards. Not so much in Africa, but in many of the other places. They sometimes hunt some mountain goats. Those mountain goats are also endangered. They sometimes hunt deer. Those deer are sometimes endangered. They sometimes hunt wild boar. Those boar are sometimes not around. And especially on some of the island species, there's not a lot of prey species left. And so particularly with the Russian subspecies, although they feel that there's enough habitat in place, there's enough forest and trees and open space left, there's not enough deer that live in the forest for the tigers and the leopards that live there to expand out. And so they're actually working to help expand the prey populations first, and then further expand the leopard and tiger populations. Now, to do that, our special shout out today is called the Amur Leopard and Tiger Alliance. They have partnered with the Wildlife Conservation Society, which owns and operates the zoos in New York City and the New York Aquarium. They have an ongoing project in Russia that's been going since the 90s of running cameras to monitor the population of leopards and tigers in that area. But also they're working to help preserve the deer species that live in that zone so that there's enough food for the big cats to eat. And they're hoping to increase the prey species. And during that time, they know that's going to take many years to get the number of deer back up to a big enough population that the tigers and leopards can expand out. They're working on captive breeding efforts of both the Amur tiger and the Amur leopard. And most U.S. zoos that have a leopard species typically have Amur leopards because they are so threatened, and they're the most threatened large cat in the world with only 40 left in the wild. They have built a very robust species survival plan for them to where there's now over 200 just in U.S. zoos that are accredited and part of this special breeding plan. I have never worked with leopards in a zoo, but I did volunteer at Utah's Hogle Zoo, and they had Amur leopards at the time I was there. So I was able to see them, and they have since had a cub born there. So that was very exciting. And I know San Diego Zoo also has Amur leopards. So I have seen those. Those were the most recent leopards that I saw, were down in the San Diego Zoo. I did have a chance to see an African leopard in the wild. I actually saw two different leopards during my time in Kenya. A big male the one day, he's the one in the photo earlier today, and then 2 days later we saw a female leopard. The thing that was really exciting about seeing leopards in the wild was their ability to move through their habitat without making much sound or disturbance. The area we were in was a little bunch of trees on the edge of the grassland in the Masai Mara in Kenya. So that's part of the Serengeti ecosystem that you've probably heard about, a great big plains in Africa with, there's little streams and low spots where water gathers when it rains, and then those spots grow little trees. So they call those acacia woodlands. Acacia is a type of tree that grows there. And in the woodlands is where the leopards like to hang out because they can be up in a tree and safe from lions and hyenas. And so we were driving around one day in the afternoon, and a guide had spotted a leopard over in one of the woodlands, and we came over and we saw him first up in the trees. He was probably 25 feet up off the ground. He was just waking up. We saw him stretch, we saw him yawn, and then we saw him come down the tree and start to move through the grass to go on his hunt. And we were able to follow him for about 20 minutes, or watch him total in 20 minutes. Some of that was still up in the tree. But it was really remarkable to see how he could weave in and out of the shadows of the trees and in the tall grass. Even with a bright yellow coat, he quickly blended in and disappeared multiple times to where we thought we'd lost him, and then he would show up again. So it was really exciting to watch a leopard in the wild. It was also remarkable because there were a good number of other animals around. There were some impala, which is a type of antelope. There were some monkeys. There were some guinea hens, which are very loud kind of grassland chickens in Africa. They will usually sound an alarm if they see a predator, and all the other animals will get on edge. This leopard was so sneaky, he was able to kind of move the other direction from where the birds were so they wouldn't tip him off, or tip off the prey species that he was around. And he was very stealthy and an admirable quality in a big cat. Well, that's what I have to share with you today about leopards. I would encourage you to never buy actual leopard products. Never buy an actual leopard skin, claws, teeth. If you see that for sale, report them to the authorities. It's not legal for them to sell that anywhere in the world. They are an endangered species. They are protected across the globe by the Commission on international trade in endangered species, that is also known as CITES. That is a pact that about 190 nations have signed to limit the potential trade in endangered species. So if you're ever shopping or visiting in foreign countries or even in the US and see anything that looks like it might be actual leopard or any similar cat species, please do not buy it. And if you feel like it, report them to the authorities because it is illegal. In recent time, places in New York and near Los Angeles have been busted by the cops and confiscated for having and selling illegal endangered species parts. So it is a problem. It still exists in the US today and in many big cities. So it is something that still could use more help in stopping. But I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared with you today about leopards. I will be posting some photos and more information up on the Facebook profile. So feel free to check that out later today. And as always, full episodes of the Critter Chat will be uploaded to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram later today as well. Reminder, tomorrow there will not be a Critter Chat. I'm taking Sundays off from being a zoo nerd to get some other things done during this quarantine time. As always, be happy, be healthy, stay home, stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.